Hello and welcome to Virtual Virilio, Speed, Politics, Potentiality. My name is Jason Adams. I'm the co-director of the New Center for Research and Practice. And just to say a little bit about what the New Center is, I'm just going to read from our statement. So the New Center for Research and Practice is conceived upon the idea that the space of knowledge is a laboratory for navigating the links between thought and action. Our pedagogical approach bootstraps the conventional role of the arts and sciences to construct new forms of research and practice alongside, within, and between the existing disciplines and technologies. The New Center's aim is a constructivist one to assemble an environment, both virtual and actual, which we're doing profusely today. I've always wanted to do this kind of thing a lot more. As you can see, it's kind of difficult, but I really love the idea of having 10 people online and 10 people in person, and creating a very kind of like hybrid space like that, which was really kind of our goal from the beginning. So our aim is a constructivist one to assemble a both virtual and actual environment that inspires our members to invent alternate understandings that can be put into collective practice. The New Center is a nonprofit higher education institute. We offer graduate level certificate programs, workshops, seminars, exhibitions, residencies, and conferences in critical philosophy, social and political thought, art and curatorial practice, media and technology, and transdisciplinary research and practice. And our network of thinkers and scholars advise and assist those seeking to make the transition between undergraduate and graduate schools, as well as from graduate schools to the professions. Through studying at the New Center, students practice graduate level research in a manner that does not interrupt their existing academic aspirations. We're not trying to replace the public university or even the private university or colleges. We're basically attempting to complement, enhance, and intensify people's already existing academic practice, and including basically autodidacticism, people who do it independently, completely outside of institutions, and that kind of thing. So we're really trying to be kind of in the interspaces between existing institutions and even completely outside of them. So I've recently relocated to Seattle, where we have one of our largest cohorts in the US. So we'll be doing more hybrid in-person online events like this in the future. I'm going to say a little bit about myself, and then we'll go around and do introductions. So about me, following the publication of my book, Occupy Time, I have a book called Occupy Time, Technoculture, Immediacy, and Resistance. It was published by Paul Gray Macmillan in 2013. This is basically applying the theories of Deleuze and Virilio to the Occupy Wall Street movement. And basically looking at Occupy as...
Arkasını sen mi yaptın?
Evet, ben yapmıştım.
Nasıl bir açıklama vereceğiz çocuğa? Bu öğretim ne olduğu konusunda.
Everybody mute their microphones, please. Until you're going to speak, that is, of course. And then
Yani konu değil ya.
Hayır, adamların şeyini dinliyordum da.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I have a book called Occupy Time, which is about the Occupy Wall Street movement, looking at it not as a spatial movement, but as a temporal movement, one existing in time rather than space. And I co-edited a book called Deleuze and Race, which uses Deleuze's theory of race to think about how inclusion and exclusion works not simply through kind of excluding, but also through hierarchically including. And I'm currently revising the manuscript for my book Virtual Virilio, which is what this class is basically about. Is about the basic idea of that book. So you guys are basically getting the first view of this book that will come out, and things from this class will appear in the book essentially. I've been an invited speaker on political theory, technoculture, media theory, and political culture at a range of universities and institutions in Europe, South America, Australia, the Middle East, Canada, Pacific Islands. course, I lived in the Pacific Islands, so that wasn't very hard. But I've been teaching classes and seminars in the arts, media, and social sciences for 10 years. I have a PhD in media and communication from European Graduate School and in political science from the University of Hawaii. And I've taught at a number of institutions in Hawaii, Massachusetts, and Michigan. And I'll be teaching in the Seattle area in the fall.
I can't hear you. Jason, it looks like both of your mics are muted.
You're still muted. I think that you're muted on the Google Hangout.
Okay, so I'm just going to use the audio in my computer instead of the iPhone. Can everybody hear me now? I'm assuming you can because I can see a record of it. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so we're going to get started again. Okay, so yeah, where was I?
Teaching in Seattle in the fall.
Teaching in Seattle in the fall. Yes. Okay. So I've been working through Paul Virilio's works for close to 2 decades since I did my master's thesis on him. And you can find the link to that thesis, Popular Defense in the Empire of Speed, on the Facebook event and on the Paul Virilio Wikipedia page. If you go to the Wikipedia page, it's linked there. And that will be actually the basis for my upcoming book. Although back then I had not encountered Deleuze yet. I had not encountered a lot of the philosophers that I'm very strongly influenced by. So at this point. because it was just so long ago. So the new version of the book will be much more, I hope much more dynamic and that kind of thing. I've also taken a seminar with Paul Virilio in La Rochelle, France in 2006. I interviewed him for the academic journal Boundary 2, and I wrote the entry for him for the Oxford Bibliography of Literary Critical Theory, which you can also find on the preliminary reading list. And you can see a PDF of that you can look at. Okay, so as for the class itself, well, actually, let's go around and introduce each other. So why don't we just, I'll just use the laptop. And if you want to be on the video, so we're going to start with the people who are physically in the room first. If you want to be in the video, you can point it at your face. If you don't want to be at the video, you can just point it at the ceiling or something. But just make sure that your voice gets near the keyboard. So we'll start with the people in the room. And so I just want you to basically say something about yourself, your background in any kind of philosophy of media or technology or just continental philosophy. And then what your interest is in Virilio or in the question of speed, because it can either be, you might not be interested in Virilio, the philosopher per se, but I hope that you're interested in the question of speed, acceleration, technology, power, and that kind of thing. So at least the thematics might be of interest. So we can just pass this around, and once the people in the physical room are done, we'll go around for the people who are in the Hangout virtually. So let's start with you.
Okay, my name is Susan, and I am a former librarian, which is why it's very embarrassing for me to admit that I had never heard of Virilio before this past week. But I am interested in the concept of acceleration and how it differs from the concept of speed, and so I'm looking forward to learning more.
My name is Naomi. I'm mostly just here to listen and drink coffee.
My name is Alexa. I'm a music journalist, so I love learning more about media theory.
Okay. Hi, I'm Najat. I am a graduate student in cultural studies, and I don't know much about speed, acceleration, or the guy that Jason mentioned, but I'm willing to learn, so nice to meet y'all.
Hi, I'm Jonah Dempsey. I guess using the term coined by Virilio, I'm a peripheral theorist, a theorist of the peripheries, and I'm really happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Monarch. I'm going to be starting a master's in philosophy in the fall, and I'm currently an astrologer.
Hi, I'm Joseph, and me and Jason did a reading of Virilio back in 2004, 2003, reading Crepuscular Dawn. Yeah, we were reading deep into Virilio. No one else was reading him back then, and we had long discussions about the concept of speed in Virilio and his, was it bunker fever or archaeology in the World War II, and the feeling of architecture in bunkers.
Yeah, that was back in like 2000.
Yeah.
I am Kimberly. I am studying to be a conflict journalist with a focus on the Middle East. So, yeah, that's that.
All right, so I'm going to turn up the volume now. And if you want to just unmute yourselves, those of you in the Hangout, you can go ahead and introduce yourselves. Hold on just a second.
It might work better if you list us off.
Okay, yeah, good idea. Okay, let's start with Alex. I'm just going to go left to right, or at least what my left to right is.
Okay, my name's Alex, and I'm interested in Virilio's book, Art and Fear.
Art and Fear. Okay. Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Lizzie, and I'm from Melbourne, and I did Jason's last course on remediating political theory, and I read a little bit of Virilio in that, but I'm just interested in learning more, and yeah, looking forward to hearing more. Thanks.
Thanks for joining. Hami?
Hey, my name is Hami. I'm the graduate student at the Helsinki Art Academy, and I'm interested in technology and acceleration. My thesis is on politics of walls and borders, and I'm also interested in continental philosophy, to be general.
And Hami also lives in Seattle, and you help put on Red May, right? Or you live partially in Seattle, partially in Helsinki?
Yes, yeah, I'm part of this collective, This Might Not Work, and we worked with Red May Collective to organize the Red May festival during the May 2017. I lived in Seattle since 2009, I think, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. All right, Jacob?
Hi, I'm Jacob. I am a student at the New Center. My background is in library science, and from that degree, I'm tangentially interested in dynamics of power relating to information. It's kind of where I came to Virilio. I read some Virilio when I was doing my library science degree, and just became more and more interested in how power influences the spread of information. And so that's kind of how I'm coming to this class, thinking about information and acceleration. I currently live in Detroit, and so there's interesting things having to do with things like Afrofuturism here, which relate to acceleration and speed as well. So kind of just getting myself into and acclimated to acceleration and speed in general, and hoping this class will help me with that.
Thanks, Jacob. Leon?
Yes, hi everyone. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, some issues with my internet.
Do you want to turn on your camera or no?
Oh, sure. 1 moment. No, I guess. Oh, there it is. Okay. Well, yes. Okay. I'm Leon, and I'm currently kind of digital nomad, moving through Eastern Europe. I'm in Sarajevo right now, and I just came from Istanbul. And I've been studying continental philosophy for a few years. I read a lot of Virilio during my master's, and I think that there's just a wealth of concepts about you know, the scientific, the military scientific complex, and how that relates to speed, and the connection between, say, speed and the organization of cities or urban planning is very interesting to me. So it's really cool to see a lot of people studying Virilio.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad you could join us.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Dejan? Did I say your name right, Dejan? You still there? On scenes? Oh, yeah. Okay, so on scenes is anonymous. So we move on to Tegan.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Tegan. I've spent the past maybe 3 or 4 years studying continental philosophy, and I spent probably the past year under the influence of a professor at the university I used to attend, who has really pushed me into the direction of studying new media and the intersections of technology and art. And so that's really where my interests lie right now. Yeah.
Yeah, Virilio has actually written quite a bit about art.
Yeah.
That's something we can definitely get into. Great. All right, so, all right, well, now that we've all introduced ourselves, Hold on a second. My hope is that everyone, partially an effect of us all introducing ourselves, is that we'll all feel more free to basically ask questions.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm there from Macedonia,
yeah. Go ahead. Did you want to introduce yourself? Yeah, we can see you. Your audio is not working though. You have to unmute yourself. Oh, really?
Now?
Okay, now we can hear him.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah, yes. Go ahead. Okay, yeah, go right ahead. Actually, now we can't hear you, but we can hear me. So, hold on a second. Let me open the. Here we go. Okay, now we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. To introduce myself, yeah, I'm interested in acceleration and post-contemporary philosophy in the sense of Armenian and new trends in philosophy. In the terms of Paul Virilio, I'm not actually very interested because he's a Christian, and I'm not satisfied with the Christian metaphysics because because it's vertical and always always taken from above conclusions, and here with some special center when everything coming to us. I'm a more I'm a more for metaphysics who is a multiplicity in the sense of multiplicity. Yeah. Who have more centers than one. You understand me? Not one universe, but in the whole universe.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
But I don't have that Christian attitude of I like his theory of anti-fascism that he have, but I don't appreciate he's belong to the Christian tradition, and like Catholics or Orthodox or Protestant. I think that is a poetic mythology that humanity is overrated, in my vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that can be noted about Virilio is that yes, he is indeed a Christian, and I would say he's a very unusual Christian. But for example, he is somebody who has been lambasted by philosophers of technology and other philosophers of technology and speed and economy and things like that, such as Nick Land, for being he calls him a
that is implied.
Yeah.
Sorry, that is implied totalitarianism. You know, the Christianity, like metaphysics, implies totalitarian systems in the praxis, in everyday life. You know, and in that sense, I'm not interested in. I'm interested only in some elements of his philosophy, like speed, acceleration, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
but I cannot accept him in, I don't know how to say that, in his holistic view of the, because, you know, when you like something to change, you must leave the mythopoetics, metaphysics behind you, because there is now no change. We suffered 2,000 years from Christianity. We have a problem now in Balkans, 25 years with reborn of Christianity. You know, is like fascism. I don't know how to explain that. I don't have experience in ex-Yugoslavia with Christianity. For me, this looks like a fascism, you know? And in that sense, I cannot understand Paul Virilio. Maybe I will learning something new from you and from others there. But that is my stance. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, I mean, the idea of this class is really is not to take Virilio at face value, but to really kind of read him in our own way, as we would like to read him. And this has actually been a common critique of Virilio. Not really the Christian thing is maybe come up in a few people's writings, like Nick Land has complained about that and says that he's.
Nick Land is also a totalitarian mindset. Nick Land.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I don't like that, man. You must have a democracy in socialism.
I don't think it's a totalitarian, but I don't really like his theories.
Nick Land is the Chinese hyper-productive so-called communism, you know?
Yeah.
But how to say it? It's no freedom there.
Yeah.
What the individuals have in totalitarian system.
Can I interject?
You know, we don't have nothing. We lose ourselves in that sense.
I don't know how useful the critique of Virilio's Christianity is. Virilio doesn't, insofar as Virilio doesn't really write about his Christianity.
Hardly ever mentions it.
So I wonder if it would be more useful to critique or deal with the things that Virilio does write rather than his Christianity, which he doesn't. I think he's been pretty explicit that he doesn't want to write about it because he's not good at writing about it. Which I think he said. So I wonder how useful it is to critique his work from the angle that he is a Christian, because I think it's more his work by critiquing his work itself. I don't know. My battery's almost going to die also, so I might drop out. Just a heads up. But I don't know how useful that critique is of Virilio.
Yeah, I should actually. Yeah. Yes. We just got a request from one of the people who are in the room who would like to just know some basics about Virilio. So I'm going to talk about that for a minute. And well, first let me just basically give the overview of the class, and then I'll go into more detail, like specifically. So. we're like filling the room with like the ambience of this thing.
So you got a good party there,
Okay, so I'm gonna just a minute. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about the class. So basically, so the idea of the class is called Virtual Virilio, Speed, Politics, Potentiality. And just to give you a basic summary of what Virilio's main concept is that speed and power are directly connected. So he basically asserts that as our society has sped up, as we've gotten moved faster and faster with different technologies, such as cell phones, the internet, even automobiles, certainly high-speed Concorde jets and things like that. That the faster we move through the world, the faster that we move through the world, the more we become kind of implicated in structures of power in various ways. And he actually says that there is a hierarchy of speed. So those who move very quickly throughout the world, who communicate quickly, who travel quickly, who basically rise up in society quickly, and that kind of thing, are usually have more power in society. So to move quickly or to communicate quickly is a function of power, according to Virilio. And
it's like E equals MC squared for philosophy.
Yeah, you can say that. Yeah, yeah, it's yeah. So he now the thing about it though, and this comes back to this question of Christianity and some of these other issues, is that a lot of people have understood this idea as being kind of essentialistic and as being like pessimistic about technology and almost like anti-technology. But the thing is that Virilio is not actually anti-technology. And so the idea of this class is, and basically what he thinks is that, he has a critique of what he calls the political economy of speed. So the political economy of speed is this relationship between speed and power, speed and economics, and that kind of thing. So the speed with which things move, and a big part of it is that he's saying that technology, even just think of the internet. Like the internet came from the nuclear bomb. I don't know if you guys know that, but there is basically the U.S. military had a fear that if a nuclear bomb hit, that they would suddenly no longer be able to communicate, and therefore they wouldn't be able to like clean up the ruins and kind of like dominate the world as they had been doing so far. So the whole reason for creating the internet, and this really goes along with Virilio's theory, the reason for creating it originally was so that the military could communicate even in the event of an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, which would knock out all power in the U.S. if it was large enough. So it was to create a perpetual communication system that would not necessarily require technological infrastructure to still be in place, because it could still the internet could still function even if a huge portion of technology were wiped out. So his theory there is that the development of technology as we've known it for much of human history, and he just chooses basically to interpret human history as having this direct connection between technological development and military development. So the more militaries and kind of militaristic forces attempt to control the world, the more they develop technologies that will assist them in achieving that goal. Now, he's not really one of the kind of people who, like in cultural studies, for example, which I find very fascinating, who engage in like audience studies. Like audience studies is basically looking at, okay, we can say that the internet was developed for military purposes, but that doesn't mean that the people who use the internet, or on the audience side, on the consumer side, it doesn't mean that they're using it in the way that the military intended them to use it. And even Facebook, you could say Mark Zuckerberg has intentions about how Facebook should be used, but that doesn't mean that the users are going to use Facebook the way that Zuckerberg wants it to be used. So, he's not one of those kind of thinkers, but but he's also not really essentializing technology either. He's not saying that technology necessarily has to come out of military development, or that technology necessarily, or speed necessarily, has to come out of hierarchical power relations. He's just saying, he's kind of being a historian about it, and he's saying that this is how it has developed historically speaking.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that archaeology itself
Yeah.
is an essentialist stuff. That's what his in his view of it is essential. From
Yeah.
the critiques I've seen.
Yeah.
But you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people say that, but my work has been an attempt to show that what he's trying to say is that that he's basically what he's trying to do is he's trying to give us he's trying to raise the question of what does it mean to actually be a critic of technology? What does it mean to be a lover of technology? So to be a critic, imagine that you're a film critic, right? Or like an art critic. If you truly love film or you truly love art, or you claim to, you're not going to love every painting in the world. You're not going to love every painter. You're not going to love every musician or whatever, or every filmmaker. You're going to have certain filmmakers that you're like, wow, this person is really on the ball and really has a good film eye and things like that, right? Or a good painting eye. So similarly, if we think of technology and speed as an art, then he calls himself a critic of the art of technology. So if you're a critic of the art of technology, then that means that you can be selective about what you affirm and what you don't affirm. And it also means that being critical of technology does not necessarily mean that you are anti-technology in any way whatsoever. Because he's Virilio is that I'm using this Deleuzian term, which basically means potential. So the virtual in Deleuze means the potential or the possible. So what I'm trying to bring out is what is Virilio kind of implicitly saying might be possible instead of what we currently have, instead of this currently militarized and capitalistic development of technology and speed. What is his kind of alternative? And he has a number of things about that. He has a concept that he calls popular defense, which is an alternative to militarism. And in popular defense, basically what it would be is that there would be no military, potentially no police either. And the idea is that the population as a whole becomes capable of defending itself spontaneously. So if we were invaded by Canada, which is probably unlikely, if we were invaded by Canada, the whole population of the United States, for example, would be trained and capable of defending itself from the mass, the Canadian, imperialist takeover. And we could just, defend without necessarily needing a military. Now you can also, yeah, exactly.
Probably already at that point in being able to defend from Canada.
Yes. Well, we can defend from all kinds of things, but he's trying to think of how can we, because for him, the problem that we have with the development of technology is that it's all driven by militaristic values, right? And by capitalistic values. So then one big question would be, is there really an alternative to militarism in the first place? So his alternative to militarism is what he calls popular defense. It's been called by some people, it's been called by some theorists like Gene Sharp. If you look at Principles of Nonviolent Defense, which is, I think it's like a 3-volume set. It's like pretty big, and it uses the unlikely term, even though it's a theory of nonviolence. It uses the seemingly unlikely term of transarmament, which basically means that the whole population is not necessarily armed with like weapons, but is capable of defending itself in whatever way. So that's kind of that's one of his alternatives. He has a lot of different alternatives like that. He has a theory of architecture that he calls the oblique. So he thinks that one of the ways that we're controlled by architecture is by the tyranny of the right angle, of straight horizontals and verticals and things like that, and that this basically leaves the body in a state of inertia, and that if you think about like how quickly we can communicate, like none of you necessarily even really had to come here today. It's really great that you all did physically come here in person if you live in Seattle, but technically, because there's a hangout, all of you could have just stayed at home and come in via the hangout, right? I mean, technically.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
There's no virtual coffee.
Yeah. So that's kind of part of what he's saying is that the development of technology is about rendering the body inert. And his theory of architecture, which he calls oblique architecture, and so flat surfaces kind of do that same thing, right? Because we're not going up hills very much. We're not like going down hills. We're not like having the body thrown off at a diagonal angle or anything like that very often, because of the way that urban design is and architectural design is. The oblique has, and you can see this at the Jewish Museum in Berlin. As you're walking through and looking at the exhibits, the floor starts to go like this, or just to show the camera, it starts to go like this. And so as you're looking at these things, you start to feel a little bit like off balance, you know, and it doesn't feel like the normal flat surfaces that you're used to. And so his idea of oblique architecture is architecture that is constantly throwing the body into motion, and constantly throwing the body into motion and making us kind of experience the world from angles that are not quite what we're used to, kind of thing. So he has a lot of alternatives like that that could be guiding the development of technology, that could be guiding the development of speed, but that aren't right now. So the idea of the class is to look at this philosopher of technology who is so commonly read as just a pessimist and somebody who just, you know, hates technology and who's like a moralist and things like that, which, you know, I don't think any of those things are really true personally. But to look at somebody who's usually read as a pessimist and to try to read them inside out and think, okay, yes, obviously they have a critique of things as they are, but what is this thinker kind of implicitly suggesting might be possible otherwise than what we currently have? So that's kind of the idea. Because a lot of people who read him, because he's critiquing speed and acceleration, things like that, they think that he's saying, oh, everybody should just slow down and we should just move much slower. You know, he has, and just in the sense of like not communicate so quick, not use like the internet, not use like, you know, try to live in, you know, people talk about like localism, like buying local and like walking instead of driving a car and things like that. I don't think that's really what he's saying, but a lot of people immediately think that's what he's saying. And so when I wrote my master's thesis on him, I took the advice of a professor in northern British Columbia, and that professor suggested, you know, why don't you just find a thinker that you think is interesting, get every single book by them, get every single thing that's been written on them, read all of it, take extensive notes on all of it, and then come up with your own fresh interpretation of this thinker. And originally he suggested Etienne Balibar, who's a political philosopher. But I was really into Virilio at that time. Joe and I were reading Virilio, and we were actually going to Left Bank Books, and there was a bunch of people who were reading Virilio at that time, because a lot of people were into technological theory at that time. And I think it's kind of becoming interesting to people again. But let's see, where was I just now? Yeah, so localism. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so the idea is basically to try to think of Virilio in a more dynamic sense than he's typically been read as. All right, so and there are a lot of different thinkers right now who are addressing the concept of speed. People probably have heard of the concept of accelerationism. Accelerationism is this idea that there was an essay called The Accelerationist Manifesto that became very popular in the art world especially, but also in a lot of political circles. It's almost the opposite of what people think of Virilio. Like, people think that Virilio is critiquing speed and that he wants slowness. And people understand accelerationism as basically saying that we should just speed everything up and just embrace faster and faster speeds of and kind of accelerated processes in society, and just kind of see where they go, more or less. Now, in both cases, though, so both of them are very centrally focused on this question of speed and acceleration. And this is actually like almost a movement at this point. You know, one big thing that accelerationists call for is there's the question in technology of, say, automation. So as production processes become automated, obviously there's going to be fewer and fewer jobs because all of those jobs are going to be taken by robots doing it. So if that is already in the making, and there's not like a really strong virulent movement to kind of control the development of that, then one thing that would help to mitigate the mass unemployment that would probably come out of that is what's known as universal basic income. So that's one thing that accelerationists have called for. They basically said, no, just go ahead. I mean, let the capitalists automate everything, and then we'll take it over, you know, as socialists. I'm talking about left accelerationists. And then, you know, hopefully somebody like Corbyn or Bernie Sanders will win. And then we fight for a universal basic income so that everybody can have a basic income and nobody has to work. And we can actually move outside of the logic of work, move outside of the logic of employment, and actually start to enjoy life itself rather than focusing everything on that.
So does Virilio address accelerationism?
No, he doesn't, because the idea of accelerationism became a big thing after Virilio. Yeah. I think that the Accelerationist Manifesto. Do you know when that came out? Yeah, 2013. And Virilio has been writing since basically like the 60s. Yeah.
It's still.
Was that? I think he's pretty old. Yeah. 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 I don't know if he's even reading this stuff at all.
Does he think that like militarism can be unlearned, can be taken out of the system?
I think he does. Yeah. I mean, he gives a lot of examples of popular defense. Like, for example, he gives in Prague. I mean, it's something that still happens now, and you could say, for example, like in the Prague Spring, which was like this big revolt against kind of like pro-democratic revolt that happened in the late 60s in Prague. The Russians were basically invading with tanks, and the people in Prague, just in order to resist the invasion, they just went and tore down all the street signs and all the numbers on the buildings. And so the population itself could just rely on their like mental maps of the city. You know, because I mean, if you lived in Seattle for a couple years, you eventually know the parts of it that you need to know, and you can pretty much navigate it even without any numbers or signs or anything, unless you're going to some new part of the city. So same thing in Prague, and that's what they did. And for them, that was a kind of popular defense because it threw off the tanks and the Russian military coming in. It made it very hard for them to do anything. Even though they were armed to the teeth with tanks and stuff, and obviously the Czech population didn't have anything except for their ability to tear down all of these markers. Now that would be much harder today, obviously with Google Maps and all that kind of stuff. But there are things that would be comparable to it, I think. Okay. So yeah. So in this seminar, we're gonna, if you look at the reading list, it's been posted. I have 3 articles. I have my overview article for Oxford Press. I have an interview with him called "The Speeds of Ambiguity," and then I have my master's thesis. And then we're gonna read a bunch of secondary texts. All of the texts that we're reading, pretty much all of them are texts that emphasize this more dynamic view of Virilio that doesn't just see him as like a celebrant of slowness and like localism, but is more looking for the kind of the more dynamic version of Virilio. So people like that who are citing him, who do that in what I would consider to be a more interesting way, is people like Benjamin Bratton, William Connolly, Patrick Croghan. Deleuze and Guattari cite him about 60 or 70 times in 1,000 Plateaus, and they really complicate his concept of speed in a very interesting way in that book. I have the PDF of that, so if anybody wants that, I can share it with you. and you can just do like a word search for speed and then a word search for Virilio. You'll see that they really complicate what he had to say in interesting ways. And then Jacques Derrida has an essay called "No Apocalypse, Not Now," which deals with what he calls the aporia of speed. So he sees it as kind of like a question instead of an answer. And then the authors of the Accelerationist Manifesto, Nick Chernyshek and Alex Williams, they also have an essay called "On Cunning Automata," and at the limits of the dramalogical. And then the Virilio books, looks like I have about 12 or 13 of them. We're not going to read all of them, although I do have notes on every single book by him. I have something between 10 and 20. Sorry, I have something between probably like 5 to 10 pages of notes on every single book by him. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
I just knew it from reading Wikipedia earlier today.
So that's about it. And if you're interested in the class,
Jason, can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, hey, Martin, how are you doing?
I'm not getting any sound.
You're not getting sound from me? That's okay. Damn it. Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hi, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
You can? You can hear me now? Okay, great.
I just got back into town, and sorry I'm late.
That's okay. Thanks for coming, you guys. Awesome. So we can just open it up for questions now. So anybody who would like to ask a question, or if you want to just raise some ideas or issues, you're welcome to do that. Go ahead.
Sure. What would you say is the connection between Virilio and Jacques Ellul? I mean, you mentioned, I think, some other thinkers, including Deleuze and Derrida, but I see a lot of similarities between Jacques Ellul and Virilio.
Yeah.
Both in terms of the critique of technology, and not just the critique of particular technologies like smartphones or what have you, but the critique of like a Heideggerian kind of critique of technology as a kind of world system, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there is a lot of. They are very, very similar in that respect, and especially for those who want to read Virilio from a Christian angle. I mean, Jacques Ellul is a much more virulent, or at least a much more outspoken Christian than Virilio is about Christianity. But yeah, I'd say there's quite a bit in common with them in that respect. But I guess for this class, I'm really trying to push Virilio's ideas and kind of what he's working on in a more kind of open-ended direction. And so one where Gilles Deleuze has this this famous phrase where he says that what we should be doing as philosophers is taking a philosopher from behind and making them give birth to a monster, but a monster that the philosopher would recognize. So this is, and that's what he does. If you read Nietzsche, if you read Deleuze on Nietzsche, you read Deleuze on Hume, you read Deleuze on Kant, all of these philosophers, he does his own version, his own Deleuzian version of, say, Kant or whoever, and basically makes Kant give birth to this much more singular version of Kant through the way that he reads them. And that's kind of the same thing that I'm trying to do with Virilio, I would say.
So what kind of things can Virilio maybe give birth to, in your opinion?
Well, for example, I think that he uses the term, I don't think that he's really opposed to speed, personally, even though I know a lot of people read him that way. I think that he, well, one example I gave earlier was popular defense. I think his theory of popular defense as an alternative to militarism is very, very important right now, especially with all of the police killings and everything that have been happening. I think that there is, you know, people are looking for alternatives. What is there really an alternative to? Is there really an alternative to the military? You know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Well, I think that also might be the wrong question to ask.
Yeah.
What kind of monster could be brought out of the reading?
Yeah.
Because that already ignores the potentiality and virtual aspect of that. Because I think if you keep it open and virtual, then you have a million questions that come out of that. But if you say what can, then you've already set up the idea of what he can ask. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It kind of nullifies the virtuality aspect. So that's what I think.
Oh, that's a good point.
And also,
Go ahead.
how has he been taken up by other people, other disciplines? And like somebody mentioned Afrofuturism.
Yeah.
And so I would be interested in knowing like how different disciplines or different ways of thinking or modes of resistance take up his theory.
Yeah.
And also how are they complicating it?
Yeah, I mean, there's not most of the people who read Virilio read him in such a manner that they kind of read him as like because they don't read like his entire body of work in many cases, and as a result of that, they end up being really hyper focused on just that he is opposed to speed and things like that. But
Why
so
do they do that?
because
Why do they jump to that opposite?
yeah.
How does he define speed is another thing I want to ask.
Right.
There might be multiple definitions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To answer your question, I think by nature we kind of just have this tendency to develop a false dichotomy between things. So we're presented with a set of information and we must assume that there is an opposite to that. So we always gravitate to that opposite. And there's only like two ways to look at something, essentially.
Binaries.
Yeah. Well, it's a logical fallacy.
Yeah. I think that's true. Yeah, as far as Afrofuturism, I would say Afrofuturism probably has more in common with accelerationism, actually. And actually, there are people in, and that's the New Center is very focused around kind of accelerationist ideas, and there are a number of people who, a number of figures from the kind of milieu which started around Warwick University in the UK, who were like there's this guy Kadwo Ishun, and actually Louis Chude Soke, who's going to come here pretty soon. He actually knows Kadwo very well, fairly well as far as I know, and Kadwo actually invited him to come speak there not that long ago. So there are people in the accelerationist milieu who are a lot of people actually who are very interested in Afrofuturism because of the way that it combines like racial justice with high technology and kind of not being so critical of speed. See, I read Virilio as being he's definitely a critic of speed, but I think that he's also kind of mapping the nature of a speed-oriented society. And so it's not only a critique of speed. It's sort of like, how does speed function in the world we live in as it is right now? So the way that I would connect it is I would try to think of this more dynamic version of Virilio that I'm trying to articulate, and that I would say is already there in the first place. And then I would be trying to connect that to kind of questions that are raised within, I say, if we're talking about Afrofuturism, questions that are raised within Afrofuturism around speed, technology, acceleration, and that kind of thing. That would probably be the way that I would do that. Did you ask a question, Martin?
I'm typing some questions to you. I don't know if you're getting them.
Okay. Okay, so Martin asks, here's a question, and let me know if you've covered this before I arrived. In what sense is there more than an associative relationship between accelerationism and Italian futurism? And in what way does Virilio mediate that relationship? Virilio's quite a bit similar to Walter Benjamin in that respect, and I think he's a pretty strong critic of Italian futurism. I think that he thinks that Italian futurism's connections to fascism and to kind of fascist ideas with Marinetti and people like that, he's not surprised by that at all, because he thinks that is is a fairly likely outcome of embracing speed and technology in the way that the futurists do.
But there is the question of the agency of techne.
Yeah.
That seems to underlie both of them. So in other words, I'm addressing this not at the level of ideology, in which we can be both, for observing acceleration versus a platform, and focusing on the epistemological connections that may lie, and that's why I brought up the question of agency. So I'm wondering whether this is something that you've teased out in your own writings, or is it something that you're thinking about now? Yeah, as someone who's really interested in embodiment and questioning the kind of uncritical acceptance of the dehumanization of the human by its becoming colonized by machinery or the digital.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going. But I've always sensed that Virilio is very much aware of these contradictions, and I'm wondering how you think about it. Have you teased those relationships? I just lost video. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Okay.
There's ontological trauma there when your face disappeared from the screen.
I'm getting an echo now. Just turn down the volume. That should fix it. But you should still be able to hear me, and I see some green lights indicating that you can.
Yeah, I'm hearing you fine. So
yeah, in terms of well, I'm always trying to think whenever I'm presented with something like that, like accelerationism versus decelerationism. I usually try to think of like a third alternative that, and I guess the way that I would look at Virilio in relation to the accelerationists is that I would say that both Virilio and people like, say, Nick Chernyshek and Alex Williams, even though they seem to be on opposite sides of this question of like the body and mediation and that kind of thing, they probably are to some degree opposed in that respect. But at the same time, I think that a lot of times when people talk about philosophy of technology, a big question is, a major question that comes up for a lot of people is this person a techno pessimist or is this person a techno utopian?
Right. Yeah.
And some people will say that like Chernyshev and Williams are techno utopians, and then other people will say that Virilio and I don't know, like maybe Heidegger or Adorno or something, that they're techno pessimists. But I think that
maybe this might help. I try to be neither, and try to bring to bear these issues in very concrete ways, like looking at the question of technology and agency with respect to, for example, an embodied jazz musician playing with instruments when the instruments themselves are shaping the cognitive processes of the players in very real ways, and actually creating pathways in the brain because of the ways in which music needs to be articulated on that particular instrument. To push this a little further, for example, I just got asked to review an essay on robot improvisation. AI robot improvisation, the creativity of robots as opposed to human beings. And so what's common in terms of creativity between robots and humans, that raises some of the kind of territory that I think Virilio really brings to the surface. At what point are human beings going to give up completely the art of improvisation and just allow robots to do it? I mean, do you think that's going to happen? Do you think Virilio has a take on that process?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, can robot improvisation be defined as improvisation? Because there has to be some sort of programming, right?
Yeah. But it's programming of artificial intelligence, which is capable of learning and adapting, and therefore exhibiting the properties of novel generation of musical ideas in the contingency of the moment, which I've been asked to review this essay, but this essay is about real computer projects.
I've heard some of them. They're interesting.
Yeah.
They're really,
Do you consider? I mean, I don't mean to. I think Virilio is in the middle of this, so I'm wondering, what you think of it. What Jason thinks, and where would you go in Virilio to look at the underlying ontological and epistemological issues at stake?
Well, I feel like it forces us to rethink a lot of things, right? Like how might we rethink ontology, and when the conversation also includes our intelligent things that are not right, and also how might we think.
Jason, could you translate that, because I'm not getting the question from that woman.
It's not so much a question; it's also like
I'm Martin Rosenberg, by the way. I don't know your name.
Hi, I'm Najat.
Nice
Yeah,
to meet you.
so I was saying, like, it also forces us to rethink and also reconsider how we think about what ontology is, because if we historically have thought about it in relation to, like, in the context of human beings, and then human beings like things, and also how do we rethink about it, and also in relation to consciousness, right? Things that have consciousness is things that have the ability to think, or like, right? And also the second thing that I keep thinking about is how might we rethink what constitutes us agency differently, when we have like technology programming, and then also how might we rethink agency in terms of like in relation to programming and also programming and scripts, right? Like the way we converse, and like there's a certain type of script that like we adhere to. When I say good morning, you're expected to say good morning, and that's like a certain type of programming that plays in place, which is different than like a programming that an artificial intelligence would do. And then also, yeah, I think thinking about these questions and rethinking what they mean would put us, or would complicate his works around speed, his works around speed in relation to power, and also what the future or future that's already here could mean. I don't know.
Can I interject real quick because I gotta go in a minute. I really wanted to focus a bit on, or get back to a minute, the idea of the potential virtual. You wanted to make the centerpiece. I think it has an inherent contradiction in it, though, that maybe you're not completely seeing. Because you said there's an aspect to technology, even in history technology, you know, and movement of the speed from the chariot to the tank, right, to the airplane. There's always an idea of war, of disaster, of murder, of national, you know, all this foreignness to it, this horror to it. But there's also an implication, right, that you said that was hidden there, that is a potentiality of something good. Now, but then you're always going to have that danger with it. So they're always going to go together. I don't think you're ever going to be free of that virtualness.
Right.
I think the implication is to be free of it, but I don't think you can. And I think that's a contradiction that you can't get away from in that inherent virtuality.
Because they complete a system.
They complete a system. Yes.
I feel like this conversation is happening within like a security state apparatus where we're constantly, right? Like, so how do we think outside? Because like we are creating the future into being, and so how do we operate in a mode of thinking that doesn't have a security state apparatus?
Right. Wait a minute, are you saying we're creating a future into being? Is that? I don't know that for sure. I don't know that. I don't. But I understand.
Yeah. I mean, I don't either, but I just said it. And like, I think there are different ways of thinking about the future too. But like, how do we think about the current, like our current present politics, as well as the potential and possible future outside of the security state apparatus?
How would you?
That doesn't reproduce.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
And
just offhand, Martin, one thing you might consider, just if we're going to go back to the idea of improvisation and AI for just a moment, I was thinking that AI and improvisation allows for a kind of rupture in what we think of as cognition, because when we talk about AI, what we usually talk about is a kind of algorithm, right, that can be embodied in a particular machine that then improvises. But that algorithm can go between different machines. It can go in different locations. It can be in two locations at once, you know? So it's not just that it's mimicking the human mindset, the human mind. It's in a way very different and very alien from the human mind, because it's not tied to the body in the same way that human cognition might be. But where would that be in Virilio? I'm just thinking, like, some of the stuff that Jason said before about the body, right? And the way in which, again, architecture kind of nullifies the body, or a perfectly smooth, perfectly flat architecture nullifies the body. And in the same way, Virilio talks about how perfect speed, like instant speed, is the nullification of speed, because everything just happens at once, right?
Could you say that? Could I interrupt for a second? Could you say that one more time? Smooth spaces in the Deleuzian sense nullifies the body?
Oh, no. So, you weren't here for that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jason was talking briefly about Virilio's concepts of architecture, and saying how a perfectly flat or perfectly smooth space kind of nullifies the body or renders it inert, right? And in a similar way, instant speed in Virilio is kind of like non-speed, right? When everything happens instantaneously, everything freezes. Right? And so
it's like Moby Dick, ubiquity in time.
Yeah. So maybe that's a place to begin looking. You know, think about the rupture between the body and the consciousness, quote unquote, of the algorithm, and think about like the instant speed with which AI can learn, because AI can learn and process much faster than human beings can already. So
Yes.
that's just on that note. I've been reading a lot on AI recently. So
In what ways does smooth architectural space map onto the smooth space of Deleuze and Guattari, which I've always taken to be a description of a certain kind of cognition within an individual and amongst individuals? So I'm trying to see how they connect. Did that make sense, Jason?
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that. But I think the thing about maybe smooth was the wrong adjective. Like an architecture that doesn't engage the body kind of renders it inert, right? So that you're not actually using the body. You're kind of like this kind of architecture basically nullifies the body. Like when you're perfectly comfortable, you kind of forget that you're embodied for a minute. Maybe that's
I want to make sure that everybody else gets a chance to raise a to talk, like Hami, and because we're gonna have to wrap it up pretty soon.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
People are leaving to hang out. And
can I ask you a really quick question?
Yeah, please.
Okay, cool. This is really interesting, but I had a question because I recently read other philosophers who talk about technology, which was interesting to me. For example, Willem Flusser, which comes from this Jewish background after the Holocaust, basically, and he writes about technology in a utopian way, but also in a phenomenological language. And he sometimes comes across these critics, but he passed away in '91, and he didn't get experience much of the internet. But it seems like Virilio talks about racism and Italian futurism and that kind of stuff also, and the dangers of technology. But with this genetic modification, how does he? Because it's in a way it's non-human, but or if you say post-human, but in contrast to Flusser, it talks about the technology in this human sense, like that technology makes us human, like that's what makes us human. What is Virilio's stand on this? Because I mean, your book is Occupy Time, and I'm interested in the time aspect of it also. So do you see any connections between these two at all?
Sorry, connections between which two again?
The notion of time as we go forward with technology, things get complicated, and this political aspect of technology, so the genetic modification and post-human idea, and the dangers of it. Does Virilio get there at all?
Yeah. I mean, basically, Virilio. Virilio talks about, for example, that by creating like biotechnologically enhanced humans, by creating like artificial intelligence and things like that, we're going to have what he calls super racism. So super racism would be not just like the racism of like biological, supposedly biological races, but a form of racism in which those who are like biologically enhanced or like artificial intelligences, especially if and when they actually exceed human capacities, will become like a new dominant group in society that will kind of force all non-biologically enhanced people down, most likely. And he talks about that in Crepuscular Dawn and a number of other books. As far as time, I mean, every single time that he's talking about speed and the relationship between speed and power, in my opinion, he is talking about time, because he's talking about time being sped up and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think he's talking about time very often in there. Does that answer what where you were going with that, Hamid?
Yeah. I mean, it helped a lot. I was more interested about this future idea in Virilio. So what does he think about?
He
Because
is
you know, like Willem Kloster's future is super utopian to me. You know, it's not post-human, but it's too human. You know, it's too humanism. It's this idea that technology is what makes us human. But
okay, yeah. For Virilio is a futurist, but but not like in the Italian sense. He's like a dark futurist. So basically, he sees if things keep going in the direction that they're going now, he sees kind of a nightmare. So think of like a lot of sci-fi films that are sort of dystopias, like Minority Report, and you know, other sci-fi films like that imagine this sort of nightmare near future society, high rise. There's so many examples. Maybe The Matrix is an example.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, but so all of those are about the future, but I would say that he's kind of a dark futurist. This is main Mad Max, yeah. Well, we should probably call it to an end for today. I hope that some of you will enroll, and even if you don't want to enroll, if you found this interesting, if you can let me know about other people who you think would find this of interest, then I can connect them with the class. And there was a video made of this, so the video is available for everybody. You can send it to people, you can repost it wherever you want, and all of that. So thanks a lot, everybody, for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next week at the same time.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody.